We want to begin with the dire situation at the southern border. New Customs and Border Protection data obtained by CBS News show that agency is on track to process more than 300,000 migrants, an all-time monthly high. That includes record numbers of families and children. Meanwhile, cities, states, and federal law enforcement report being overwhelmed as the ripple effects spread from border communities to all across the country. And for the latest, we are joined now by CBS immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez. Camilo, you've done some extraordinary reporting on this. Can you tell us what is really driving this sharp increase and who is making up the majority of migrants?
I think, Margaret, the more precise answer I can give you is that the push and pull factors that historically have driven migration to the U.S. have intensified to a degree that I don't think we have ever seen in U.S. history. We have a relatively stable economy here with many job openings, and that is driving a lot of migration. We also have an immigration system that is massively backlogged and cannot determine quickly who qualifies for asylum and who does not. That also attracts migration. Those are the pull factors, but we have very powerful push factors as well. Deteriorating political and economic conditions in countries like Venezuela, in countries in Africa and Asia are driving record numbers of people to the U.S. This is truly an unprecedented crisis of humanitarian proportions along the border. We have never seen this before. 250,000 migrants are being processed each month at the U.S.-Mexico border.
That's breathtaking. And this is a hemisphere-wide crisis.
That's right.
The president sent the Homeland Security Secretary and Secretary of State to Mexico to press Mexico's president to help police that border. What did they achieve?
Well, I was told that U.S. officials asked Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador to increase enforcement within the interior of Mexico to stem the flow of migration further south at the Guatemala-Mexico border and effectively divert migrants away from northern Mexico and along the U.S. border. And it really does illustrate the outsized role that Mexico plays in how we deal with this incredibly complex and vexing problem. We are relying on Mexico, Margaret, to do much of this border enforcement and immigration policy because they really are the key player in this debate. They have to accept the returns of non-Mexicans, and that is a big diplomatic task for the Biden administration.
And we know that some of those ports have actually been shut down.
For commercial and vehicle traffic, which is a huge economic consequence for Mexico and the U.S., correct?
Well, exactly. This is just beyond humanitarian crisis. We are at so many levels of complexity now. Texas's governor has signed into law that hasn't yet taken effect, but it would in March.
That's right.
The ability for his state law enforcement to stop migrants and arrest them. Texas has vowed that they will fight this all the way to the Supreme Court, but the Biden administration is going to take them on.
This will be one of the most important legal clashes on immigration in 2024. The Justice Department has already told Texas that this law will undermine relations with Mexico and prevent federal officials from enforcing federal immigration laws, including U.S. asylum law, which allows migrants on U.S. soil to request asylum, even, Margaret, if they enter the country illegally. This law not only allows Texas to prosecute and jail migrants on actions that are already legal on federal grounds, on federal statutes, but it also allows state judges to issue what are effectively deportation orders, even though Mexico has said that it will reject returns of migrants from the state of Texas. The Justice Department has given Texas until Wednesday to say that it will abandon plans to enforce this law as planned in March, but that is very unlikely to happen. Texas, I think, will try to implement this law, so we should expect a prolonged legal battle, Margaret.
Potential development as soon as this Wednesday.
That's right.
So that brings us back to what's happening here in Washington, or what's not happening, frankly, with lawmakers talking about trying to put together some piece of legislation to change immigration laws, which haven't really been updated in decades.
Since the 1990s.
Right. And to put in the funding that President Biden has asked them for. Where are we in those negotiations?
Well, the White House, importantly, is currently entertaining some sweeping border restrictions, including an authority to expel migrants when Border Patrol is overwhelmed and to suspend asylum law, just like the Title 42 pandemic-era policy that ended earlier this year, to convince Republicans to get on board in terms of backing additional aid to Ukraine. That would have been unthinkable just 3 years ago, and it speaks to the situation we're in at the US-Mexico border. I think that these talks will intensify in January. They could very well collapse because we are dealing, after all, with immigration. And as you know, Congress has been desperately gridlocked on this issue for decades. But I think there are two different factors here at play that could make this a different scenario. The White House really wants aid to Ukraine, and it is under tremendous political pressure to do something new at the US-Mexico border.
Camilo, we'll continue to follow your reporting.